also discuss the implication of the slowdown for Asian-Pacific economies to be moderated and also by one of our panelists. So let's begin our second panel of today is talking of Asia-Pacific economic outlook, moderated by the one and only Professor Drobnick for the series.
This is the last session of the Asia-Pacific Business Forum, and we've saved the best for the last. And we have two gentlemen who are going to talk about the Asia-Pacific economic outlook. Both of them eminently qualified. One of them you saw 2 nights ago at the opening, and the other is a new person. So let me invite the new person first to join us on stage, Radju Munusamy. Radju is the leading partner for PwC Indonesia, and he's led many other businesses here in Indonesia, but importantly for us, he's a Master of Science degree graduate of the USC Viterbi School of Engineering, and that's what brings him here. But it's his talent and knowledge about the Indonesian economy and more broadly the Asia-Pacific economy. And our second panelist is Dr. Narongchai Akrasansee, who I've introduced to you before, but a longtime friend and of course, the former Minister of Energy and Minister of Commerce and the director of the Thailand Development Research Fund, one of the founders of the Thailand Development Research Institute, which is the advisor of the Prime Minister of the Bank of Thailand, and so on and so forth. But Dr. Narongchai has been a featured speaker at 4, 5, or 6 IBEAR events, starting out in 2003, where he was a keynote speaker in Los Angeles for the Asia-Pacific Business Outlook, and then in 2006 in Bangkok at our international forum like this. And in 2014, he flew over to Rangoon to be a speaker at this kind of forum. And at that time, he was the Minister of Energy. It was a little bit difficult to get him to leave Bangkok, but he wanted to come, so he did. And then in 2016, he was a key speaker for us in Ho Chi Minh City for the IELP program for the IBEAR 40 students. So without further ado, please welcome Radju, and Radju will make the first presentation, then Dr. Narongchai.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning, or almost afternoon, all fellow Trojans and other participants here. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. This is actually my first speech at the USC event, and invites me quite often to take part as part of the Aussie program. But to speak in such event, this is my first time. So thank you for involving me here. The topic that was given to us is about Asia-Pacific outlook. So it can be granted that 90% of what I'm going to be saying here will be wrong. Because it's an outlook. If I know what's the future, I will not be here. So anyway, I have a couple of slides just to start with. And if it can be, let's start with the first page. Allow me to stand. So if you want to look at the outlook, let's talk about the present. Let's talk about why are we here. Right? A lot of things has been said, oh, we are here because of the war, because of COVID, and so on. But it boils down to 3 things. We enjoyed cheap capital for too long. We enjoyed cheap labor from China for too long. And we've enjoyed cheap energy for Europe for too long. We had the party. Everything was good, and suddenly the party ends. So it's not just because of COVID, it's not just because of any other thing, but it's because we enjoyed good things for too long. And all good things must come to an end. And this is where we are today, right? And where are we going to head? Well, right now the confidence for the future seems to be a bit challenging. But let's look at especially what it means for us, for Asia, and also for Indonesia. Next page. So here is why we should be confident. Because emerging Asia is still going to be the place to be. I think I'm echoing, I only heard today Rich and talking about Asia, but yes, I think emerging Asia is going to be the future. Let's look at this. Let's look at from 2021 and also looking towards the future. Pay attention to the year 2023. 69% of the world GDP growth will be contributed by emerging Asia. Okay? I'm not saying this. This is OECD. What does that mean? More than 2/3 opportunity for growth will be in emerging Asia, and that's include India, that's include China, Indonesia, and all other emerging. Compare that to even the rest of the world. Compare that to the OECD Europe. Compare that even to rest of the world, which is only about 12%. So this is where, what's the reason why it's going to be emerging Asia? Look at this. The countries in Asia typically have free trade agreements, comprehensive economic partnership agreements. They pushed for it in the past, and that's going to benefit now and in the future. China is recovering supply chain. Recently, they changed their policy on lockdown on COVID, and that's going to start benefiting. That's start going to roll out. And India is becoming choice for friendly shoring, as manufacturers look not too much dependent on China. The next natural location seems to be India, Vietnam, Indonesia, and so on. Next page. Let's go down further to Indonesia. Indonesia has recovered very strong compared to many other countries. We did go down, even when we were down during COVID, we were not as down as many other countries. And now, with all the commodity boom, we are surprisingly doing very, very well. And it will continue with a good policy action, a good policy implementation. I'm also looking at the leading indicator, not just the lagging indicator. If you look at the leading indicator, the consumer confidence index seems growing. Same thing with purchasing managers index, also showing confidence, and international tourist arrivals. And I was just chatting with one of the attendees here. Real estate market, hotels, commercial real estate, also coming up in quite a big way, which means a good sign of recovery. Next page. Now there are many things that can derail not just Indonesia's success, but any other country's success. But I like to pick one, and that's the labor market. Anne mentioned about manufacturing, that not many people entering manufacturing. Indonesia, if you look at the past 20 years, the manufacturing contribution to GDP has been eroding. Service sector has taken up. And now the government is going back into the manufacturing of downstream industries in mining, EV batteries. All this will require talent. All this will require highly qualified workers. And I'm not just saying this, even the government is saying this. To build those smelters in Sulawesi, thousands of Chinese workers were brought in. Why? Because they couldn't find qualified Indonesians to construct and to try to operate those smelters. This is something new. I'm bringing personal experience here. When there were a lot of tech layoffs in the past month, 2 months, 3 months, initially we thought, wow, there's going to be a lot of talent out of here, in the market there for us. Because we've been losing a lot of people, a lot of talents. And then we started interviewing them. And we realized the startups actually did not provide them with adequate experience or adequate training and development. I interviewed a 26-year-old with an MBA degree, 2 years total experience, general manager in one of the startups. When we interviewed, the question was, how did you get a general manager position in this startup? So apparently the startups faced the same challenge. They couldn't get people and they have to grow. They got the money, cheap money. They just keep hiring, hire fast. But couldn't provide the adequate experience during those times. And when they lay off, guess what? They don't lay off their best, right? So what's there in the market now is quantity, but the quality will be a problem. And if Indonesia wants to reverse from its deindustrialization, we need those talents. So, and this could be what stopping, accelerate the growth of economy, the lack of qualified talent. Next. Now I come from a deals perspective, from M&A perspective, so I'd like to bring something. What does this mean? The future economic growth, because M&A is an important part of looking at progress, investment, and economic growth. Well, what we are going to see is high cost of capital. There are a lot of PEs there, VCs, they got the money, right? So they have the dry powder. But they are not going to spend it because they know the next round of going to the market is still very uncertain. So they are going to be very careful. And that's what we are seeing now in the startup market, where there's not much money being spent. Investors are going to be more cautious. They are going to take much rigorous due diligence with expectation for lower valuations. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, company valuation goes to the roof. And people are willing to pay because the money is there and the money is cheap. So you can make it up. The cost of equity was low. That's not going to be the case now. And the target, who are going to be the target here? If you are selling, you want to sell it high, right? And the buyer wants to buy it low. That's not going to happen. So the target is going to be those companies in difficulties. Companies that are unable to manage this impact of inflation. Those who have a highly leveraged, have more interest to pay. These are the companies that's going to be available for targets. And then they have to manage the expectation. Supply chain disruption, ESG needs, and portfolio assessment. That's going to be the theme of M&A moving forward. Of course, countries like Indonesia, Southeast Asia generally is going to be a good target for them. Next. So looking at Indonesia in specific in terms of deals, the number of deals last year was going up again after the COVID. Right? But if you look at the first half, it seems to be in the same rate as it was last year. It's exactly about half. But we think that moving forward, it's not going to be that many number of acquisitions. Technology, media, telecommunication, services, transportation, and energy, I think will still dominate moving to the future. M&A likely, there are a number of likely M&A because many of the PEs are looking to sell the portfolio companies to exit. So when they exit, somebody will buy, right? So that transaction is still going to happen. And as you can see, growth fund PE, they already slowed. As you can see with the startups unable to raise the next round. So don't expect much from transaction from growth fund. And finally, last 2 years, COVID as well as the commodity boom has created a lot of wealth for a lot of people in Indonesia. Right. Family offices are growing. Money is available among the family offices. They will need to use that money. So that's where I think they will be a key in future transaction in Indonesia. Either they do it themselves or they will do it by being a partner for PE. So they'll provide the money, the PE provide expertise. I think that's my presentation, Richard. Thank you very much.
now. I take the privilege of being an old man, maybe I'm the oldest man in this gathering. With all this introduction, I'm the only one without the privilege of having gone to USC. I seem to be an outsider here, but I have participated in a number of USC functions before. Yes, you have listened to Radju. He's from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Anything PwC say, you can believe. I belong to two companies, both of which we have with PwC as auditor. One company, we pay PwC $37 million a year for auditing our account. So, 37 million, including the payment in Indonesia, PwC. I don't know whether that money goes to you or not, but not on the auditor side. Okay. Anyway, they are all good people at PwC. This is the last session. I believe organizer would like it to have a happy ending, the good finale. So we don't want to end with any sad story about Asia Pacific. What I'm going to be saying will be based on my involvement with a number of exercises which we regularly do during this time of the year for our budget planning. And I think all of you have to do that too. So I'll be sharing with you what we have learned, what I have learned from all these meetings. Yes, the economy slowing down. Bambam just arrived. I think I can confirm that it was a happy ending as an organizer. Yes, the economy is slowing down, it's obvious, inflation and all that. But I'm going to be talking more about Asia Pacific economies. I'm selective here. I have some slides. Dick said no more than 4, so I put 14 slides into 3. That's how you cheat when you go to exam, Asia Pacific situation, if you look at the figure number 1, the figure shows that although we may have problems with energy costs, with food security, but for Asia Pacific, much less than any other region. When I talk about Asia Pacific, I am selective. I refer to East Asia, but excluding North Korea. Unfortunately, I wish I can include North Korea at my last stage in my life. But looking the way the president there is doing, introducing his daughter and all that, maybe I will still continue to exclude North Korea. ASEAN, when I talk about ASEAN, I'm sorry to say I have to exclude China, Myanmar for the time being. That's unfortunate. South Asia, mainly India. So these are the countries. And if you move to figure 2, and I can say, make comments about some of these economies. It's difficult to say how much they grow, we grow, and so on. Nobody knows. IMF makes mistakes all the time. They revise regularly, quarterly, always now. So we don't know. Nobody knows. But we look at what's happening. Take, for example, in China, we were very concerned about China's situation, particularly at this last meeting, the party meeting. But we were confirmed by experts that the new team is very good. The new standing committee is very good, particularly the new prime minister designated by the name of Li Qiang. Instead of Li Keqiang, you're going to have now Li Qiang, who was governor of Shanghai before coming to this position. There's a good explanation about the problem they had in Shanghai and about lockdown. They said that at that time, Li Qiang was not there. So he was not executing the policy in Shanghai, or that action in Shanghai. Sorry, please go to the second, the one with the picture of President Xi Jinping. And, okay, so that's the one. So we have also heard that this new team is going to be market friendly. Whether you believe it or not, there's some evidence. The setting up of the Beijing Stock Exchange and the linkages of these stock exchanges with Hong Kong. We were concerned about Hong Kong because our headquarters, AIA, is in Hong Kong. And biggest operation is, of course, in China and Hong Kong. But we were concerned, we were confirmed that they would keep Hong Kong as a major gateway between China and the West. Xi Jinping made a statement at the time when he visited Hong Kong first, July this year, and emphasizing the advantage of Hong Kong of having this common law and good governance and so on, which is very true. Coming from Southeast Asia, I can confirm to you that Hong Kong has excellent, very good governance, business governance. The second one that we were encouraged very much is about the strong Indian economy, particularly with the general digitalization that I mentioned the other evening. I showed to you here, this is the Geo app, which has 400 million plus users at the moment. And you can use Geo for everything, including watching Indian movie. I have now become a fan of Indian movie. I watch Concubine. Have you watched Concubine on the Netflix? If you have not, you miss something very important. And this actress, Alia Pat, I don't know whether I pronounce her name properly. He is now my heroine, in life. I watch every movie she's in. And I tell you, Indian movies now, Bollywood, excellent quality, super quality. Before that, 10 years ago, no, lots of silly things. Not anymore. It's very good. And India has changed so much. I remember the first time I went to India in the 1970s and 80s. Oh, I felt so sad. India adopted Western democracy, but denied Western market capitalism. But in 1991 they changed. And the day that they changed, I arrived in India. And then I started to learn about the new Indian policies. So these are very good things that happened about the digital economy in India. It's a classic case that all of us should follow. I mentioned that the other evening. I mentioned this again. Japanese people say about Japan not growing in this. That's nonsense. Japanese economy is very resilient. I was in Japan last 2 months ago, and we have partnered with Mitsui Fudosan, developing property in Thailand. And they're doing a lot of things in the Tokyo area, near the Imperial Hotel. You can go and visit, it's fantastic. So Japan may not need to grow very much, but they're already highly well developed. And they have introduced what we call Japan Society 5.0, which is fascinating. You guys talking about digital economy in industry and manufacturing and so on, but they're talking about digital economy in life, in society. Society 5.0 is about connecting cyber area with the physical world. That is really fantastic. South Korea is also very strong, very strong. My daughter, my children just returned from South Korea yesterday. They got stuck at the airport because of the snow. Could not take off after 4 or 5 hours. I was very worried, but they arrived. ASEAN is my love life, So we look at ASEAN, we relatively external debt relatively low and very good FX reserve, particularly Thailand. Thailand has so much money that Bloomberg made fun of us. Bloomberg said Thailand is like a third world country with first world capital market. That's an insult. It means that we do not know how to spend the money. Which is really true. You go to Thailand, you deposit your money, you got nothing. 0.5 or something interest. Or you deposit, and some banks say, please go away. You don't want your money. Bank of Thailand has to continue to absorb the liquidity into the bank. And ASEAN, of course, benefits from this. China's COVID restriction easy. When I had meeting in Hong this, and I confirmed to my colleagues at AIA that China would definitely ease. They asked me why. I said that when Xi Jinping was coming to Bangkok, we had to prepare for the agenda. And we asked if we could put COVID on the agenda. And President Xi Jinping said yes. So that is a sign that he was willing to talk about it and how to manage it. So I said that to my colleagues in Hong Kong, and it happened. Now it's happening. We will benefit from that. Then move on to figure 3. Of course, the inflation, yes, but will be below Western economy. It's mainly because of cost push inflation. And most of our countries, we do not have the privilege of this QE exercise. You know, US, Europe, and so on, they are using QE exercise to solve their problem. We don't have the privilege of printing money. You know, people would not allow us to do that. Japan does QE also, but Japan doesn't have high inflation either. So interest rates are projected to be relatively less than Western economies. The banks, central banks have all gone up with the interest rate, but not as much. Not in terms of basis point, not as much as what the US is doing. Digital technology, if you look at the graph, you can say whichever way you measure it, East Asia is very advanced in terms of digital economy relative to the rest of the world. That would be the big force. Public expenditure on infrastructure will be continuing. We have a graph showing the public infrastructure expenditure. Construction will still continue to grow. Maybe slow down in China because they built a lot already, but it's growing very fast in India, Indonesia, Thailand. Construction infrastructure is still growing. I have a business in the sand mining. People ask me, Dr. Narongchai, why you do sand mining? I say, because infrastructure building is going to continue, and our sand mine is the biggest in Thailand at the moment. Each day we are selling about 20,000, 30,000 US a day. Each day, one day, selling sand. But selling sand, making that kind of money is not easy. A lot of transportation, production going on. But that would definitely be the area where we will continue to have growth. And if you look at political tension, are we to be concerned about is US-China? Yes, but unlikely to accelerate in 2023. I mentioned a few points. Number one, showing the figure, the last slide. The Taiwanese issue is very, very crucial. We discussed that a lot. Because the US is very concerned about China and Taiwan. And the Taiwanese, sometimes they say they don't like China, they're Chinese but they don't like China. Sometimes they say they do. If you look at the last election, more and more people are become more China friendly. To the point that the president, the party person, she resigned. Because you look at the color of the results of the municipality election, overwhelming, or the sign of favoring China. And the critical point is about their constitution. If they do not change the constitution, if you do not change from Chinese Democratic Republic, I think there will be no problem with China. But if they change, there's something to be concerned with. And the US is very safe. The US say, oh, we recognize what China policy. But they did not say which China. So which is US is very safe on that one. And the second point is about the midterm election in the US. You look at the results. Republican majority in the House. That means Joe Biden will find difficulty increasing public debt. And look at the map, the result of the election map. I wonder whether these are nations of two countries. The color completely different, the result completely different. You know about the debt in the US. There is this law, passed at the time of Wilson, wasn't it? In the First World War, when he wanted to raise money, when he issued the war bonds, the House said that, okay, they approve, but from now on, whenever you increase the debt, it must come to the House. It must come to the House. You know? Unlike some of our countries, government can increase debt without having to go to Parliament. But in the US, they have to do that. So every time. So the Republican will do this leveraging, you know, with the president. And therefore, I don't think Joe Biden can be so vocal about doing this and that in other countries. ASEAN-China relations. Do we have problem with ASEAN-China relations outside South China Sea? Indonesian friends are here. Yes, we do. But, you know, it's improving. 10 years ago, when we had ASEAN summit in Cambodia, we could not issue statements because of the ASEAN-China problem in the South China Sea. At the moment, the so-called Code of Conduct, very much actively worked on by Indonesia, is in process. And also, relationship among the Coast Guard. I had meeting with the Coast Guard, represented by the Coast Guard. They seem to be much friendlier to each other than what government or the media are saying. And you know, issue at the border is mainly about the Coast Guard, not the Navy, it's the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard, if they have problem, it would ignite something. So they're on talking terms, and you see how Joe Biden and Marcos Jr. shaking hands seem to be much happier than the last president of the Philippines. And I think, you know, I said the other evening that China, US needs China for economy. And even more importantly, US needs China about North Korea. US has to rely on China about how to manage North Korea. So I don't believe that the US and China will really have a big breakaway or big fight between the two of them. Except one thing. Taiwan declared new constitution, declared independent, China moves, and US may move. But that is a very unlikely scenario. Finally, the Russian-Ukraine conflict, yes, have had relatively, have problems everywhere. But in our area, relatively less than, particularly Europe and other areas. So with that, I think we can have a happy ending, and Bambang can be happy about the conference with a happy ending. Thank you very much.
Narongchai, it's so nice of you to give us a happy ending. Because I think it will make Bambang perhaps dance and sing for us at the closing luncheon maybe. I'm just going to ask a quick question to each of you, and I'd like you to limit your response to 30 seconds or a minute so we can open to the audience. And Narongchai, sort of tongue-in-cheek, what would your Johns Hopkins Professor Bella Balassa say about you having a private company selling a very sophisticated product called sand? What is your comparative advantage in selling sand?
Well, he taught me competitive advantage. I happen to have a big land area where I have a lot of sand underneath, so I have competitive advantage in sand mining relative to many other people in Thailand.
Radju, a more serious question. And of course, as a resident of Indonesia, you should be careful in how you answer this. Our class of students, IBEAR 45s, were in Jakarta this week, and we met with the owners and president directors of Ciputra, Munusamy, of Saratoga, and we met with not the owner but the chairman of Pertamina, Hawk. And all of them in different ways said the Indonesian economy is in good shape, and it looks like it will continue to be in good shape because of a good business-oriented leadership from the president, Jokowi, who listens to people and has hired good people, Sri Mulyani, of course. And there's going to be an election in near term, in a year and a half or so. What do you think about the future of the business environment under whoever might be the next leadership of Indonesia? You can have more than a minute if you'd like, but less than 5.
Yeah, the same thing was said in 1998 when the fall of the new regime of Suharto. What's going to be the future of Indonesia? A lot of pessimism. Right? But business world in Indonesia, the business people, doesn't matter who's on top. Indonesia grew 5%. Right? So they're so resilient. I think we have a good government, you are right. Very business oriented. They listen to the business people. You have Minister of Finance who was very prudent in managing the fiscal. You have a central bank who is also very prudent with the monetary policy. And the executive branch looking to modernize Indonesia. So the momentum is carried. And obviously it's a luck factor, we can say, with commodity prices. That really helps. But again, Indonesia have a history, a tendency to shoot itself on its foot every now and then. Right? And that's a difficulty for Indonesia. It's not necessarily politics. Right? It can be many things. But we seem to have that difficulty to cross the hump. Right? We'll go right to there and then it's like that. Right? So yes, there is a worry. It might be a minor setback. But the new generation of leaders in Indonesia, the good thing is I think President Jokowi has set the momentum. Right? He had 10 years, his kerja, or as his, the think later, now just do the work first. Right? And that has created results. I think it will be difficult for the next president to unwind that, maybe to slow down, but to unwind will be difficult. And I think that's a part that we are going to see. Now it's up to us not to come up with, crazy policy. Let me take half a minute to look at India. Mr. Narongchai said about India that he visited before and now. India was 18th largest economy in the world, if my memory serves right, in 1980. They were also 18th largest economy in the world in 2000. So in 20 years, they practically remained the same. They grew with the world, but they remained the same. 20 years after, they are now the 5th largest economy in the world. The difference in that first 20 years and the next 20 years is a policy formation. How they open up, how they change the policy, how they become business friendly. And see how fast it accelerates. So if you want to look at Indonesia, if future leaders of Indonesia want Indonesia to become, the 7th economy and then the 5th economy, pay attention to the policy. Don't come up with crazy policy. And this is not just the president, but the parliament. Hence, the president must have control of the parliament directly or indirectly. The beauty of President Jokowi is, although his party only 25% or so, but he is able to, play with all the other levers to make sure everybody support his policy. So I think that's the answer. Thank you.
So Radju, also thank you for helping us end on a happy note. Radju, you want to comment?
I ask my Indonesian friends, please do not disappoint me about Indonesia, okay? I have been observing Indonesia and at the moment I have a lot of confidence. I tell you this, before I was quite worried. And I like to quote one of their president, Gus Dur. You remember Indonesian? I don't know his full name, but he was president at one time. And he made this statement, I think on conference, I don't know whether in Singapore or Jakarta, He said, problem about Indonesia, we have had leaders problem. Our Sukarno was crazy about women. Hatta Suharto crazy about money. And Habibie crazy. And me, Gus Dur. I made everybody crazy. That was a classic statement about leadership in Indonesia. But since then, it has been improvement, And I think the major transition is SBY, a general. I was a little bit concerned about, a general becoming president because Thailand, we have had so many generals as prime minister. Many of them failed our country badly. But SBY, I met him, I talked to him, and how he managed it. It was a major transition from an army control, to a real, maybe real or almost real democracy. And Jokowi came and strengthened that era of democracy, good democracy, decentralization, and so on. So, and he started something with this capital, new capital as an aspiration. I translate that, I interpret that as Indonesia going back to Majapahit. Back to the future kind of situation. So I really believe that anybody replacing him, after him, would continue this so-called phenomenon of Indonesian democracy and economy. But so please, my Indonesian friend, don't fail me, don't disappoint me. Elect somebody very good. Thank you very much.
So now I have to make one comment before we open about Guspi. I had the opportunity to be in a small delegation of American big corporations, maybe about 15, 20 people, in the middle of Gustu's reign. I don't remember if it was 2007 or 2008. But he said to us, welcoming us, we were sitting in a horseshoe type of table and he was in the open space. He said, I'm so happy to welcome this delegation to Indonesia. We're seeking foreign investment or foreign investment. Usually, I don't like the word general. I have so many generals around me, but today I really like the word general. General Electric Senior Vice President is here. General Motors Senior Vice President. He said, I'm so happy to meet you generals. Okay. Who would like to ask a question? Okay, in the back, microphone, please. Yvette.
Hi, hopefully I'll be more clear today. So we did a case in macroeconomic class on India, and
Put the microphone close.
yeah, we did a case on India in our macroeconomic class, and it was noted that their services sectors are doing really well. Manufacturing was kind of ignored or not as productive because China took over, and how the agriculture sector is struggling and it's not as productive. And so I would say similar. Would you say a similar model applies to Indonesia and Thailand? And also, what's the answer? Like, do we keep moving people out of agriculture into manufacturing and services? And how can we improve some of that productivity to boost the GDP? To catch up to probably the US, where their productivity is at the agriculture sector. I'm just curious because it tends to get ignored, and hundreds of millions of people are still employed in that sector. So, thanks.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, if you can look at Indonesia in particular, labor productivity has not caught up. I think there's typically it's behind the wage increase in Indonesia. But you're bringing China as an example of productivity and how countries like in ASEAN can learn from that. The reality is, I think it will be a mistake to learn from the Chinese experience. You have a different business structure, economic structure, and we are living at a time where automation becomes inevitable. So labor productivity is going to depend very much on the kind of technology, the kind of automation that you are going to deploy. You're going to see a different kind of manufacturing than in the past. Right? So for example, you're making a gadget where it's manufactured in China and now probably going to be in India and other places. In the future, if you want to think about long-term productivity, labor productivity, that's going to be manufactured at your home. Right? Using this 3D printers and so on. So the concept of labor productivity itself will change. The more important thing, and we have to think actually, is capital productivity. How you deploy your capital to improve your labor productivity, and that's through automation. I think that's
only I Again, I have to refer to this, the way India has been doing this, increasing productivity of the people. When we learn about the digital economy, we say that digital economy, digitalization would happen, would cause the following: dematerialization, making things with less raw materials; de-intermediation, making more and more direct contact to each other; and one very demonetization, using less and less money to do things; and finally, democratization. And that's what is happening in India, that increased productivity of the ordinary people. You can talk forever about reform and education and so on. Yesterday we listened to that. In Thailand we talk about reform and education and so on. But if you equip people with the digital know-how, the technology at the low cost and access, they improve their productivity. You talk about the India economy size number 5 in the world. That's because of the democratization of digital technology productivity by this Ambani family. This guy sitting in front of us, he should be your hero. I don't know, in relationship, maybe cousin or something. But Reliance, within just 15 something years, equip people and increase productivity. And we should do the same. Thank you.
Next question. Over in front, please. And then to the back. And to the front.
Hello, good morning. I'm Ravi. I'm an IBEAR student and I come from India. So my question is about the trade agreements that were spoken about, the free trade agreements and the preferential trade agreements. So India walked out of RCEP because it feared flooding of Chinese goods and it was already running a big trade deficit with China and there were no safeguards, so it didn't join the RCEP. That was one of the reasons India walking out of RCEP was one of the reasons which can be attributed to the Indo-Chinese hostilities that broke out 6 months after that. India embarked later on free trade agreements with individual countries. So it has embarked on free trade agreement with UK, European Union, they are in progress, UAE and other countries, to safeguard its jobs and also to balance its trade deficit. So don't you think that the Southeast Asian countries, most of which are running a trade deficit with China, except Indonesia, runs only a $2 billion surplus, and that is primarily due to raw materials, not finished goods. So don't you think the Southeast Asian nations also run the similar risk of trade deficit, and the consequence of it is loss of jobs, loss of productivity, which is all going to China? Thank you.
I'd like to tell you a story about India, FTA and ASEP. Number one on ASEP, RCEP. I am the one who suggested to the Thai delegation to use what we call ASEP -1. We did that exercise when we had this ASEAN cooperation negotiation. Sometimes we could not get agreement from all. So we used the concept of ASEAN -1 for some agreement. So I made that suggestion and we signed ASEP. Mainly because India could not agree to join. And it would take too long. You don't argue with Indians very talkative people, In my career, I don't compete with Chinese because they're hardworking. I don't argue with Indians because they're hard talking. So that's my experience. Second, I did this FTA with India. I don't know who you are, gentlemen. I did this FTA, Thailand and India. 2003, we signed FTA with India. We used this fast track of 82 items. And we said that let's do the fast track first, and then negotiate others later. This is how I operate on FTA negotiation. We do something first and do something other later and so on. Yes, the fast track came, the 82 items went up. Trade going from Thailand to India went up so much on these 82 items. You know what happened afterwards? of the Japanese companies in Thailand, electrical, white goods and so on, they stop production in India and they increase production in Thailand and they export all this to India and they move their family to Thailand. And the argument was that uncomfortable living in India at the time, better living in Thailand. So no increase in items and so on. What I'm saying is that in order for FTA to succeed, there are many things that we need to do, including making the ecology, the ecosystem comfortable for foreign operators, for people to work and so on. And I think India has a hand about protection, and the bureaucracy in India is crazy. I thought bureaucracy in Thailand was bad, but India was much worse. It's unbelievable. But much improved now. So now I think that having FTA with India much more feasible from now on. Thank you.
Speaking about the ecosystem in an economy, trying to draw talent, foreign talent, or trying to draw your own talent back home. Think about Taiwan in the early to mid 1980s. Taiwan decided we're going to develop an industrial technical park, Hsinchu. And a senior level official came to a number of universities, including USC, and said, we're trying to attract Taiwanese executives from American firms to come back. And we know to do that, we have to do something for their families. And something about schools and housing and so on and so forth. There was a very serious thing. And they were successful in doing it. But they understood they needed an ecosystem for the families of these engineers and leaders. There's a question on, yes, in the back.
I'm Yoon. IBEAR 19, Korean, and currently doing business in Vietnam. I know the Indonesian government has set up a plan to move a capital city from Jakarta to somewhere in another island called Borneo. I have two questions about this issue. First one is that would you think that it is a feasible idea or executable soon, you know? The second question is that is this idea has any good implication on Indonesian economic outlook in the future? Thank you.
First one, is it a good idea? Depending on who you ask, when you ask, and where you ask. It starts with a question, do we need the new capital? And then boil down to, if it is new capital needed, then should it be in Java? Should it be outside? So if you try to put this into a decision trees, everyone will have a different idea. But this is a government decision now that has been made that we want to set up in Kalimantan, by the way. Reason being, spread the economic growth outside Java. One of the biggest problems of Indonesia is Java. Right? We have too many people. This is not sustainable. This island is not sustainable. Not this island. Java is not sustainable. So you need to spread. That's a good idea. We need new capital. Jakarta is getting flooding, blah, blah, blah. All these are good ideas. But you need to pay for good ideas to materialize. Now it becomes the opposite question. Can that money being spent in a different way and still achieve all those objectives? The fact that Jakarta is flooding, can it be stopped with less money? The fact that growth is not in the other place, should we move the capital? And then, of course, the experience of many capitals, new capitals built, Myanmar, Australia, even Washington, D.C. How many years it took before they become so-called economically viable? But of course, with Indonesia's case, it's not just going to be capital, right? Because they are also trying to build industries around. So it's very big movement. The one that I have, for me personally, in my mind is, yes, it has been decided, yes, seed, a capital and building started there. But will the real thing happen? And that really depends on the next government, not on this government. Because this initial activities, it can be stopped, as I said, who you ask, where you ask, when you ask. This is not a 2-year game. This is not a 5-year game. It's a 40-year, 50-year game. As I said in the previous question, President Jokowi has set the momentum. My opinion, in the next 1.5 years, 2 years before he leaves, I don't think the momentum will be good enough to guarantee that the new capital development will be at the same one. So it will be very much depend on what the next government thinks and the circumstance at that time. Right now we don't have private funding yet. If you follow the news, on one side you hear there is no money, foreign investors are not coming on this. On the other hand, you said the president and the minister were surprised with the huge interest of foreign money to come. I'm a professional, I'm a business person. Very simple, very pragmatic. Money will come if there is a good return. Who's going to provide the return? There's no free money here. Anyone wants to put money in the new capital, this is high risk, this is startups. They will expect a multiple return than regular market return. Who's going to pay for that? I think I stopped there.
Next question is Anne, and then we'll probably finish with Liman. Microphone up here. While we're waiting for a microphone, this idea that Java is overcrowded. Java's been overcrowded for a long time. So in previous governments, there was something called transmigrasi. So there was a policy to move Javanese to the outer islands. And over time, the policy did not work. Gagal. Anne, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Dick. Mr. Narongchai, since you are very experienced on ASEAN, next year Indonesia would host the presidency of ASEAN. Kindly give us 3 things that we should do, because as Kadin, we are also give advices to the government so that what happened in the B20 this year could be replicated as well, because I think ASEAN is way much important than B20. So kindly guide us the 3 things. That's for you, Mr. Narongchai. And for my dear Radju, you said yourself that our government like to shoot ourselves in our shoes. Correct. That's bingo, 100%. Continuing to what our colleague from Vietnam said. In the next 23 years, we are going to celebrate our 100th Independence Day of Indonesia. Should you be the next president of Indonesia in 2024, what is the right policy for the next 2 terms of your presidency to guide Indonesia to the golden year of 100th year of 2045? I would like to get that from the real senior out of PECC and Trojans as well as Harvard. By the way, he's the winner of the negotiator in Oxford, USC Fight On Spirit. That's him. Okay, please, the floor is yours, good gentlemen. And Nick, you can give the closing remarks as well for Indonesia. No, and I want to ask, when is USC is going to be in Indonesia? That's my last questions to you. Thank you.
Great. I have so much ambition about ASEAN. I don't know whether I need to apologize, but that's my life. ASEAN. And I always say that ASEAN can only go as far as Indonesia allows it to go. And my first circle of the diplomacy in ASEAN has always been, for 50 years, number one, when you bring Myanmar back into ASEAN. Year before, this is 2022, 2021. At that time, Brunei was chair of ASEAN, and we had problems about Myanmar, and Indonesia took initiative in trying to get Myanmar back into ASEAN and developed the so-called 5-point consensus that was developed, by Indonesia, including myself and our colleagues in the region. In this Asia Pacific, we have the so-called track 2. The track 2 people are always working behind the scene and submitting their recommendation to the government for action. We've been doing this for the last 50 years, including ASEAN and APEC and everything. The track 2 started this. Bring Myanmar back. That time it did work because the envoy to be appointed was Brunei, a Muslim. Myanmar is a very Buddhist country, so it didn't work. Then came Cambodia, Hun Sen. He thought he could handle the general. He was, at the first time he became chair, he said the first mission he would do would be to bring Myanmar back, but he also failed. He went there by himself. The Minister of Foreign Affairs also went there a few times, and trying to meet Aung San Suu Kyi, not allowed. I think the general's strategy at the moment, the way the general treat the lady, it actually how the general treated the lady was about how the lady actually treated the generals. So it's a revenge. The way the lady treated the generals before coup d'etat was very bad. Very bad. So now the generals treating the lady also very bad. They keep her in confinement. So now next year Indonesia is chair. My first, and I will work with it. I will work with Indonesian friends on this. In fact, we were scheduled to fly to Myanmar together last year, to see the generals. This is confidential information. I should not tell the people about it. No, we even had flight arrangement and all that, for us, including Narongchai, to fly to Myanmar to talk to Min Aung Hlaing, but it didn't happen. Anyway, that's number one. Number two, stay put on this Indo-Pacific stand that we have. Don't change Indo-Pacific, you see, because the US is moving in terms of security, trying to create a new kind of Indo-Pacific. But I think the ASEAN has already declared that the Indo-Pacific stand of ASEAN is what it is today. It would not be against anybody. It will be open, The most important thing is about this sea lane that we have on the South China Sea. Apart from that, no. But at the same time, US is trying very hard to get the ASEAN to be on their side on China issue. And I believe we should not do it. Particularly from Thailand point of view, we should not, and I hope that Indonesia will also remain the same. Finally, continue this liberalization policies, economic policies. I know difficult society with a lot of people, sometimes you cannot be so liberal. Like having this last law on outside marriage things, that is quite a shock to me, for a country these days to have that kind of legislation. But that's how society are. In terms of economy, Indonesia has continued to open. I mentioned the other night about the free trade being a dirty word in Indonesia before, but no longer. So now we continue to do this trade opening. That will be good for all of us. Thank you.
So this is your second question, yeah? Yes. Well, my previous boss once says, there are only two impossible things in the world. One is human cannot live forever, and second, man cannot give birth. Everything else is possible. But your hypothetical question about me being president, that's impossible. And neither do I aspire to be. But to your question, I think the most important for the next president is to really understand and say what's good for Indonesia. You see the last 1 year of Presidential Jokowi's term. You can see a stark difference from the previous 7 years. He actually comes out as an international statesman. Stand up and speak up. I think G20 has amalgamated that approach, and he's doing now in Europe, in Brussels, and I think he's going to carry that in ASEAN as part of the ASEAN presidency. What I mean by stand up and speak up is don't just become, the sacrifice lamb of other people's interests. I think that has been happening for far too long. Whether it's about CPO and the European Union, whether it is about downstreaming the resources. I think Indonesia has to say that what's good for Indonesia will be good for the world. But specifically what we have to do to reach that, that's international. I think we have to fix our political system. We have, I'm sorry to say, too many parties. And the campaign financing. These are all causing at least leakage 20 to 30% of our budget. We need to fix that, not at the cost of democracy, but to make sure that our resources are not depleted and enjoyed by certain elite, that this can actually be deployed for development. And the third is, I fully agree with what Mr. Narongchai has said about democratizing digital. I think the way to change this country of 17,000 islands, depending how climate change is going to affect many of those islands in the next 25 years, is to provide digital access. I was a policy manager for the B20 infrastructure task force. So we said one of our policy recommendations is affordable and easy access across the islands. Choose the best technology that can cover all 17,000 islands, make it affordable. People will learn. They'll pick up. The YouTube has enough things to learn. You said education. There are enough education materials out there. Right? Of course, there are a lot of wise things as well in the internet. But people are going to look, people are going to learn. You don't have to teach them. This is the way you bring the quality of people up. Doesn't have to be classroom by classroom, but I think it has to be screen by screen.
So Anne, you wanted my opinion. We don't have much time here. So if Kadin wants to enter into a consultancy arrangement with me, I'd be happy to talk to you. Joking. Last question now. This is really dangerous because this is a citizen of India. And Dr. Narongchai just said the Indian culture is such to be hard-talking and fast-talking. So Vimal, you can have the microphone if you make it a brief question. We have a microphone up here.
Dr. Narongchai, first of all, it was lovely listening to you, and thank you for your comments on India, especially on Geo, etc. And I agree with you, we have a great bureaucracy. We got it from the Britishers, and we have perfected it to par excellence. But the question to you is it time to incorporate environmental norms more strictly into free trade agreements and regional agreements? Because in a sense, what a lot of the free trade agreements does is shift production away from different centers and concentrates them in one or two locations. And in some sense, China is a large polluter of the world. That's because most of the production from the West is moved to China. And China is not producing for its own consumption all the plastics, all the chairs, all the cars, all the batteries, etc., etc. So is there a way, is there a reason, or is there a scope for increasing environmental norms and targets, hard targets into free trade agreements? And even, for example, avocado as a fruit became popular in California, and as a result, Mexico started facing water crisis in the production of avocado. Thank you.
Two answers. Number one, I think very soon India will join ASEAN. It is embarrassing, to have ASEAN -1, and that -1 is India. I think India doesn't want to be minus anymore, so that it will come in. Second, this open up another areas of debate and seminar about environment. When you have free trade and then companies make decisions about where to locate the production based on cost consideration, market consideration, and so on, it may create a so-called environment problem. But now we are entering into an era of the so-called ESG, sustainability, and all that. I see the improvement in the behavior of companies, in the way they do their production and so on. I see that is a new trend. So perhaps the damage caused by increase in production going forward may not be the same as what was in the past. That is my hope. I'm still concerned about the model, economic model of ESG, whether it's going to work. Definitely, people they all realize that this is important, but economically, how much that is viable and so on, that is something that we continue to work on. So I'm not as worried about the so-called environment problem caused by the relocation of production based on free trade, based on liberal trade agreement. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about a round of applause for our We have 2 IBEAR students or 1 IBEAR student to give gifts to these speakers. They don't violate anti-corruption laws. These are reasonably small.
Thank you very much, and give a big round of applause once again for our distinguished moderator, Professor Drobnick, along with our honorable panelists, Dr. Narongchai and Mr. Radju Munusamy. We would like to kindly please you to be at the center of the stage for the token of appreciation awarding. And to present the token of appreciation, we have the representative from IBEAR student, Mrs. Pat and Warren. We kindly please you.
We're all glad to have you here at USC Business Forum, and thank you so much for sharing, your experience with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Patch with also Warren will present the token of appreciation with the image of Trojans as our pride, ladies and gentlemen.